So please everyone, let me know once you are able to see my screen. So we have just started recording. So again, I would
Yes,
like
the
to
screen
clarify
is shared.
that the purpose of today's session is we would have a walkthrough over the Power BI desktop, the components of Power BI desktop. How do we import data in Power BI desktop? How do we see the data? How do we modify the data? And how do we create visualizations? We won't be creating any dashboard today, but we would be creating Power BI reports. The Power BI dashboards, they are based on Power BI reports, and the dashboards, they are created in Power BI service, which is another component of Power BI and is opened in a web browser. But today we would be solely focusing on Power BI desktop. So once we open Power BI desktop, so our screen looks like this, somewhat like this. It's a blank Power BI desktop, and so these are the ribbons or the options from wherein we could get data from Excel or other data sets, SQL Server. We could even manually create tables. We could get data from Microsoft Dataverse, and we could also transform data. Then we could add new visuals, text box visuals. And if you see, we have a menu bar as well over here, in which we have multiple options. Insert has to insert decomposition tree or visuals. And in view, we could use anything for a Power BI file. Like we are creating a Power BI desktop file, and we need to apply something. We could use this. Then there is a page view. We have three options in page view: on fit to page, fit to width, and actual size. We would be working on those. Moving on, and then mobile layout. It is specifically for creating Power BI in mobile site. Then we have got bookmarks, filters, selection, performance analyzer. These are all very important parts of our BI desktop. And in later session, we would be seeing how do we use these things. Then there's a help option as well, where we could contact Power BI community, and we could even have guidance, learning or training videos from over here. Then we have modeling as well, wherein we could add a new table, add a new parameters. And we also have a file option wherein we could save reports, open reports, get data, import, export. And we have a multiple of options under options and settings, wherein we could modify the data source settings and have other settings as well. So these all will be covered in the upcoming sessions. So I had opened options, and we have a lot many options from we could change the settings of Power BI. So as you see, we have here three tabs in Power BI desktop. First is these are actually views, report view. This one opens a visualization pane. Here we basically design the reports, that how our report is going to look. We add visualizations. And another tab, we have data tab, wherein we could see all the data that we would be pulling into Power BI. Then there's a model tab, wherein if we have multiple tables, we could see how they are related, how the relationships they are working among the tables. And if you see on our right hand side, there are panes like properties and fields. So these we would be seeing when we would be populating the data. And over to the report view, you see that we have a visualization pane over here, where we have a multiple of visuals that we could use to show our data. For now, the fields pane is empty. Whenever we load the data into Power BI, the table that we load into Power BI, so those columns or fields that are in that particular table, those are all loaded over here. And then there's filter panel. So what happens in this filter panel is whatever data we are loading in Power BI desktop, we could apply filters to those. So beginning with how to pull the data. So firstly, we would be going to our home option, and there we would have an option under data as get data. So as already told yesterday that because not everyone would be having access to the databases, so we would be using Excel for today's, or for all our courses we would be focusing on Excel. So I had already shared an Excel sheet with all of you that we would be using as a reference. So under get data, we would be clicking on Excel, and this would be taking us to our machines locations wherein we could allocate a file and open that file in PowerBI. So once we have specified the Excel that we need to open, we are prompted to a navigator wherein this is the Excel sheet that I've opened. You could see BI dimensions, and there are three tabs in that sheet. If you see, product, manufacturer, and geo. So these three, if you see, they are those sheets, all these three. And in product, we have a table. Table is specified differently as well. We have table differently and we have sheets differently. So for today, we would be just focusing on the geo tab, geography. So after I select the tab, I could see its preview on right hand side. And there we have got three options like load, transform data, and cancel. And also we have a refresh button over here which should refresh the preview. So when I click on load, the whole data would be directly loaded into Power BI Desktop. But if I do need to make some modifications to the data, I would be using transform data tab. So for now, let's not load data directly. Let's see what the data is. If we need to modify it, we could modify that. So we would be going for the transform data tab. So once I click on the transform data, so it prompts me to you could see there's a separate window now, Power Query Editor. So Power Query Editor, it is called as the kitchen of Power BI. Any modifications or how if you need to fetch some data, add some tables, so those all things could be done in Power BI Editor. This is basically kitchen of Power BI, and here we have multiple options like if we need to add some new source, add some new data from new source, that could be done in the new source. If any recent sources that I've used, I could do them over here. I could enter data in some table, create a new table. I could change the data source settings. These are all available under the home tab. Also, we have option for advanced editor where I could modify the polling data through the mQuery. Then we've got properties, refresh preview. If I need to just choose some columns or remove some columns, I could avail any of these two options. Also, if I need to remove some rows or just keep some rows and remove other rows, I could use these options. And to split a column group by. So we have multiple options over here that we could use to change the data or transform our data. Then another tab we have transform. Under it, we have again multiple options like group by, use first row as headers, reverse rows, transpose. So these all things we would be dealing when moving forward in our next sessions. Whenever we need to add in another column to our data, like we already have the data, but we need to add some. So if I need to add some calculated column, so that could be done under this. Then there's view, wherein I could profile the data column. These all options we would be exploring later on. Then tools and help. So back to home. Now, if we see that my data, this is all the data that I have from the geo tab. If you see that the third row, this has the column headers, and I do not require first two rows because it's just last updated date, and second row it's basically null. My whole data starts from third row. So I need to transform this data so that I could have it in a tabular form. So what I could do is I could like I've selected the first row and I would use remove rows. Like I do not need first two rows because they do not signify anything. So I would be using remove top rows, and then it would be prompt for how many rows I need to remove. I would be specifying 2, and our rows have been removed. But the problem is, like, if we see the column header, it doesn't make any sense. Like, it has source, probably database, column 3, column 4, column 5, column 6. But I know that my actual header is in the first row. So I could promote it to as a header. I could use this option, use first row as a header, and I've promoted the first row as header itself. And if you see, like, among other panes that are available in query editor, we have an option of queries. All the data that we are importing in Power BI, those are displayed here as tables, as separate tables. Then your properties as well, for every particular query, and I could rename it. Let's say I would be changing it to geography. Then I've changed to geography, and similarly I could modify all the properties. And then we have all the applied steps. Every step that I've done in Power BI is being tracked over here. If I need to undo something, like I just change type, so I could remove that. Or maybe let's say I promoted headers. The first row was promoted a header. I could delete it, and back I have undone that. So these are all the steps that we have created, and we could even undo these over here. So again, I have promoted first row as header. And now I have an option over here to close and apply. That now I'm happy with my data and I need to load it into PowerBI Desktop file. So I would be using close and apply. So connection is being created once I've approved. So is everyone following up? Like, are you doing the same steps all at your end? Any issues, please do let me know, because this is just a basic session. So any doubts that we have, we could probably keep them with ourselves. We could mention them later on. We could track those, or we could even, if they could be solved right now, we could solve them. So it has told me that query has been loaded, but it has a lot of errors. So let's see what are the errors. So here it displays that the zip, there are error in the zip column of the zip code. We need to check, like, why there are errors. If I go into zip, not sure. So they have told that we couldn't convert it to a number. So in the Power Query editor itself, what we could do is we could change its data type back to text for now. And if you see that we have a green line under all the columns, right? So if I just hover my cursor over that green line, I see that details about that column, that there's 0% error and 0% empty, and that all my 1,000 rows, they're valid. Basic query editor, it shows just top 1,000 rows, and same goes for city, like 981 are valid and 19 rows are empty, like 2% of my rows are empty. Same goes for state, that all the rows they are filled, none is empty. So I would be clicking on close and apply. Please someone, could you please turn your system on mute? Okay, now again back to close and apply. So now I've removed the error as well. And if you see in the fields, I am able to see my table geography, and below are the columns or the fields that I have in the geography table. If I go into the data view, so I could see all my data over here. I have a zip column, city column, state, region, district, and country. And then again, if I go into the model tab, I have just a single table, so I just see it over here. But if we have multiple tables and they have some relationship between them, so Power BI automatically creates those relationships between those tables. So we have managed to pull the data in Power BI Desktop. So now we would be creating some visuals. If you see that we have multiple visuals over here, visualizations over here. And if I just drag, let's say, a region, so it is being displayed in tabular form by default. And then I would be adding, if you see, here we have got three options. First is the fields option, second is format, and third is analytics. So we would be majorly dealing with these two tabs. So the fields, it displays that how our values or fields they are being displayed. It is a tabular form, so it is being displayed as a region. And under the format, I could make any changes to this table. Like I would like to change its font size, or I would, let's say, change the color. So everything that could be done over here. So we would be exploring these options as well moving forward. So as I have got a table over here, so I would be adding country as well. If I add country over here, so the country column has been added as well. Or I could, let's say, directly I could pull this data over here in table, and I've got district as well. So there are multiple visuals over here. Let's say if I select it and I need to remove something, I could remove it over here. And now I've got we have multiple visuals over here, that they are stacked bar chart, stacked column chart, clustered bar chart. You could explore these on your end. Also, we would be discussing them in later sessions. Then we have option for maps as well, funnels, cards, and slicers. For now, I would be pulling a slicer. If I just double click on slicer, I would have slicer over here. And let's say I pull a field over here, the country field. So it shows all the available unique distinct country values. And if I just click on Australia, you could see that the region is being filtered accordingly as per my selection in the filter or in the slice panel. Same goes for Germany. And if I click USA, so there are three regions in USA: Central, East, and West in the data. For Nigeria, there are these many regions. So I could change my data based on this slicer pair. And then we do not have like any numeric option over here, a numeric field. Otherwise, we could have populated the data in form of bar graphs, or we could have made use of pie charts to give some values. So we have managed to pull data see the table. If we had multiple tables, we could have probably have created relationships over here and use that as a basis. And also we could have used, if we had some values, we could have used multiple options over here to build the data like graphs or charts. But we do not have any handy. So for now, for today, we will be just creating table and entering. So I believe that was all that we had today from PowerBI Desktop. Like how could we pull in the data? How could we use that data as visualizations? And how we could create relationships? The relationships part that we would be covering when we would be having multiple tables. So that was brief intro on PowerBI Desktop, and then we would be saving this file. Let's see. Yeah. So I hope everyone has managed to create the report at the end. So apart from this is just the beginning. We have a lot many things under PowerBI Desktop. If I need to publish this report, because dashboard, they are created when the report is published. When you publish a report, the report is sent to Power BI service, which is the other component of Power BI. And when that report goes to Power BI service, that could be used to create dashboards. And then we have options like measures, calculated columns. If I need to add some text box, that I could do over here. And all the calculations that are done, like if we need to create some calculated column or we need to create some measures, those are based on the dex language. Dex language, like it's the basis for Power BI. If we need to master Power BI, we need to have dex knowledge as well. So we would be covering those topics as well later on. So this was the brief intro on Power BI Desktop. So I hope everyone has been able to load data and visualize that data in Power BI Desktop.
Tej, yes, I think you
Yes,
can stop recording, or if any queries, we can have it for
sure,
5 to 10 minutes. Yeah.
sure.